Hello, I'm Steve Ryder and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. We have a great episode today. We're going to be looking back at York before heading to Sandown to look at the Solario Stakes card. In the company of Sam Turner, old friend.
Hello,
Good
Steve.
to have you back.
You've dug me up. You must have been short this week.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
How is the new life going, Sam?
Enjoying it immensely, yeah. Quite challenging in a number of different ways, working in a different jurisdiction, seeing how they operate compared to us. Very interesting in a number of levels as well, really. Obviously working in a sort of multicultural office as well, which is great. It's been good fun. A sense of humour does travel sometimes. Not my jokes, though, unfortunately, but everyone else's. But yeah, it's been a really, really good experience. I encourage anyone to go and do it because I think you probably had Graham Cunningham on the show this summer as well. He did a good stint in Hong Kong. Richard Halls has obviously done Hong Kong and come back here. I think sometimes we do believe that British racing is we're very blinkered, that it's the sole jurisdiction that really counts, and I like that we're protective of it, but I do think it's a big wild world these days, and getting out and seeing how everybody else does it and markets it and how they operate is really interesting as well. Yeah, been very lucky. I've been welcomed by the trainers and jocks in the main out there. They've been brilliant to deal with. We had a great World Cup winner as well, which is a brilliant story. For Bupat Seymour and Tayache, a brilliant winner of the race as well. So that was superb in March, and we had a really good sort of Dubai World Cup night as well with 7 international winners as well. So there was a really good raft of stories to report on. So no, it was exciting.
Excellent. The only thing letting you down is Wolves.
We won't mention football. I think I said on social media that I went to see the Chelsea game at the weekend and it taught me how to count. It was very educational. I think once I've been there once this season, that's taught me a lesson.
Definitely. And Hayley, how are you?
I'm great. I'd quite like to kick off with talking about football. Brighton have had a good start to the new
brilliant.
season.
Yeah.
And my dad's team Arsenal, so yeah, couldn't be better.
All right, rub it in.
No, I'm joking.
I think we're looking at different ends of the table, aren't we?
Yeah,
Definitely.
I haven't a clue about football. All I know is that my local, where I grew up, Brighton, I always like to see them do well, and they have actually started the new season in good form.
To be fair, neither of our 11 players in the second half, they ain't got a clue about football either on Sunday, but anyway, there we go.
Well, I hope prior to coming to the show, you've spoken to Ryan. I mean, he obviously had a great York festival.
Yeah.
I expect all of the notes around his rides.
About his opinions, his views, which I have to say, normally when I get his opinions and views, it never materialises to much. So I'm going to stick to doing my own research when it comes to horse racing.
When you're asking him things, does he try and edge away and walk away from you as he does most interviews on the television?
Luckily, I go to his home, and he's got nowhere to go, nowhere better to go, apart from into the gym, maybe on the treadmill, just to try and turn that up, hammer out a few miles and put on loud music to go away from me. But I'll still come in and go, Ryan, and annoy him in one capacity.
As you walk in, you double lock the front door so he can't escape.
Exactly, and try and get his opinions. But it is funny, like, you share their opinions and you want to get their views on horses and what they like, don't like. And often you're thinking, no, I don't know about that. I think there's so much belief in the horses they ride that they can be like notoriously dismissive, which is why I think jockeys sometimes they're so hopeful because I think that's the mindset they need going out there to ride, and that's why they're not the best tipsters. They know far more than we do, but yet when it comes to reading form and things, I think that's why we're probably better to stick to what we know than actually ask jockeys sometimes. Get their views and get their opinion on how a race might unfold or something, and learn, no doubt, something to take away from it and think, oh, that could be interesting. But I think it's always really important to stick to your guns. Yeah.
And I think sometimes as tipsters and punters, too much information can cause you to doubt yourself as well. Sometimes you're better off just having blinkers on, ignoring what you hear and just rely on what you see.
I think that's a really good bit of advice, actually, if someone is like, trying to piece together the next puzzle to solve. If you've seen a performance that you've gone, wow, and that's your judgment, that's like struck a note with you or something, you go with that gut instinct, because I think more than often it pays off. I think it's really good advice.
Especially if you can back it up with a little bit of data as well, which will help reinforce your view. I think that's the best way to go, definitely.
Yeah, we'll see if we have a few wow performances that we can discuss in a Racing Recap. So the first race we'll look at is the Juddmonte International Stakes. It was billed as a top-class renewal, and Sam, I thought we had a top-class performance with Sissy Troy.
Yeah, we did. I've probably been won over by him, having been at Sandown to watch the Eclipse and been hugely underwhelmed by him. And, you know, you go back through the Derby form perhaps and question some of that. I think it was a top-class performance. I think if it had been sort of any other horse that had produced that performance and not one that had been labelled the best ever to come out of Ballydor, I think people perhaps would have given it a little bit more respect. I do think some ways that Aidan O'Brien's sort of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. You know, we put, you know, a mobile phone or a microphone into his face and ask him for quotes and how do you rate this horse, Aidan? And because he's had a litany of world-class horses, when he says we believe that this is special, we haven't seen him do what he's done before, everyone just goes, oh yeah, right, we've heard this before, you know, this is the Ballydor spin machine. But when a horse comes along like City of Troy, who is starting to stack up a CV which sort of underlines how good he is, I think you just have to trust that what they're saying is absolutely correct, you know. And I think that has been a little bit of an issue before with Ballydoyle and Coolmore, is that they have talked up the horses, and we know why. Commercially, it's important for them to make them great stallions going forward. And they're certainly all in with this lad because they're going off to America, and you know that's very, very brave campaigning for me. I know a lot of people want to see him run in the Irish Champion, but with a few different performances in the Irish Champion, I don't know whether it's really a race, and I don't wish to denigrate it, but that lives long in the memory. We've seen some great races, we've seen some great Irish Champion stakes, but you go over and win a Breeders' Cup Classic, and you're in folklore for, you know, equine folklore for however long you want to be, and especially when you've got the body of work that City of Troy's already accrued.
Yeah, definitely. What will he gain from going over to win the Irish Champion Stakes?
That was the point that I was laboriously trying to make, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's 3-1 with Bet365 for the Irish Champion Stakes, 4-1 favourite for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Hayley, I'm very intrigued. Obviously, he has the breeding to do it. Whether he has the action, I'm not quite sure, but he definitely has the running style. He has that high cruising speed, early pace in order to get into that position where, if you look back at the contenders that Aidan O'Brien might have sent over there previously, some of it you're trying to shoehorn in, whereas I do think it will suit him.
Yeah, it seems to be a work in progress, doesn't it? From when we saw him in the Derby, when he was smuggled up, sort of down on the inside and everything worked out smoothly, gaps open. Then we saw a different kind of race in the Eclipse where the ground, arguably that day, was a little bit on the sticky side, so maybe we didn't get the performance we'd all hoped for. And then we saw him being able to go forward with that pace that he has got, and that's so important if you are going to go for a classic. So he does seem to come with a lot of positive attributes if he is going to go for a classic. And like you say, absolutely nothing left to achieve probably on turf now after a Derby, an Eclipse, a Juddmonte. You know, he's got a great turf CV now as a stallion, that's made. But I do love the fact you've brought up the point that, oh, it's another great horse that I've trained, quote, Aidan O'Brien. And yeah, people might roll their eyes, but there is a lot of substance to back that up, because if you go on ratings and best horses he's ever trained in his career, if you look at the best horses ever to have been trained around the world, you know, he doesn't feature on that list time after time. Obviously, the top of the list, Frankel, Sir Henry Cecil, Sir Michael Stout's pretty prominent. Ryan Moore's ridden quite a lot of good horses, but not associated with Aidan O'Brien. So I think you do have to sit up and take note. And yes, they might come out year after year, but maybe that's because year after year they are getting a better standard of horse. But then it doesn't mean just because they're a good racehorse that they're going to be a good stallion, and vice versa. If they're not a great racehorse, they can still be a brilliant stallion, and we've seen that result over the years.
What about the other side of the coin then, Steve? I mean, you do a lot of tipping now, obviously, for the Daily Mail and analysis, as do you, Hayley. You look at the Derby, you think form's not great. The Eclipse, he struggled to win by a length and looked all out at the line to do that. They've allowed Ryan to walk the dog at York, basically, haven't they? All round on that strip, which seemed to be favoured all week. We've had the lovely strip of ground, the wind blowing him down the track. He's not been mithered at all. Do you see any negatives in the sort of the body of work that he's sort of accruing this season, or are you quite happy that those performances are a very fair reflection of his ability?
I do, and I also don't think you can dismiss his 2-year-old campaign. Like, he was a brilliant 2-year-old, and just go back to that time at the Guineas where people were saying these justifiers don't train on, and now you've had the spin of they're Galileos with more class, which obviously is the PR campaign for them. But I do think even if he hadn't achieved what he did at 2, you'd look at his 3-year-old campaign and go, that is a solid 3-year-old campaign. If you look at that alongside his 2-year-old campaign, I do think we are talking about a top class.
I think we're happy he's trained on now, aren't we?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
And look, the right horses were there, weren't they, in the
Yeah.
Juddmonte as well? You know, Calandagan, who's produced a tremendous performance at Royal Ascot, another brilliant performance there over 1.25 miles. Ghostwriter, you know, a talented horse, good gaps back as well to the 4th, 5th, 6th. You know, it was a very strong race. The time was electric. Obviously, I think it'd been well documented, the sectionals, you know, 5 furlongs, 5 individual furlongs under 12 seconds as well, which suggests they were trapping. There were certain amounts of, I suppose he got a certain amount of advantage being up in the van on a day where the speed was holding up quite nicely, but he's still going to go and do it, and he's put 3.5 lengths between, you know, the front 2 put 3.5 lengths between the 3rd, and then, you know, another good gap back to the 4th as well, spread them out. And we went into the race thinking, this is a cracking renewal of the Juddmonte, not just because of the numbers, but because of the raft of interest, you know, Japanese, French, Irish, all sorts of different nationalities were represented, and good quality horses as well on the upgrade, and he's dismissed them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to use Ghostwriter as a tool to kind of bring down the form. But if he wasn't there, and you had Calandagan, who was brilliant at Royal Ascot, he's now 7-2 second favourite behind Economics for the Champion Stakes, and then you had Blue Stocking back in 4th, who's been top class this year. I just think Ghostwriter had his conditions on that faster ground, and yeah, it should just be a performance that's championed, really.
And Ghostwriter has been running well in very good races all season. I admit he was given a lovely ride when he was ridden in France by Richard Kingscote, gave him every opportunity. Wasn't quite good enough, but he still ran a great race. And, you know, he's a pretty consistent performer, so that's all I would appreciate, instead of sort of, you know, up and down form. At least you've got your benchmark with him, which I think is important.
Blue Stocking 4th as well. She came into the race in good form, loads of money for her, and she was left, you know, struggling in 4th.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see him in Del Mar. I don't know if he's got the right action. I don't know where they're going to give him his preparation, whether it's a gallop, a race going forward. I know that they'll do plenty at home, so he'll be in peak condition come Del Mar. It's quite a unique track. You've obviously spent some time over in Dubai. There's been a lot of change over the years from Nadal Shiva to Peter to what there is now. It changes, doesn't it?
It does. And you know, Aidan's got a little bit of a mixed record, certainly in Dubai as well, on that dirt surface there. He didn't have any joy there in the UAE Derby back in the spring, but he has done quite well there before. So, like I say, these surfaces, you just do have to check your surfaces as well. It's a sweeping statement to say it doesn't operate on dirt. You know, there's obviously different levels of it as well. They won't leave any stone unturned, will
they? The horse that I always was intrigued at when I look at City Troy is Roaring Lion, and how he did, of course, and how there was so much hype surrounding him going to the Breeders' Cup. And I did actually a couple of months ago say to Ashton Murphy, "What was it again? What, you know?" And he just said he was just flat by the time he was racing in America.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't anything they could really pinpoint. He just, you know, went there and underperformed. So maybe that, you know, is something you could be fearful of. Would he lose anything with his stallion career?
Yeah. Royal Lion kept on running, didn't he? Like he won the QE2. Like he won. Yeah, he was going through the whole turf.
I think you have to go there a fresh horse, don't you?
And I don't think the US Challenge is particularly strong this year. Like Fierceness obviously won on Saturday, beating Torpedo Anna. I don't think they've got a superstar over there.
Locally, well, in America, not locally, but they're all pretty tame about Fierceness.
Yeah. We don't know whether Laurel River
No.
Is going to go over there or not.
No, and I think there's a horse called Arthur's Ride that people are pinning their hopes on. But again, he isn't the soundest of horses. He's got a level of fragility about him. So, you know, you've got to be more than 100% come the day when you're trying to win a classic.
Definitely. There you go. 4-1 favourite with Bet365 for the Breeders' Cup Classic is City of Troy. We'll move on to the Great Voltage Stakes. Los Angeles, I thought this was a good performance, and I think it's Hayley, the first horse that's defied a £5 penalty to win that race.
Yeah, he is the most beautiful horse that I think I've ever seen. I loved watching him in the preliminaries to Epsom for the Derby. I mean, he was really naughty.
Yeah, he was.
He was throwing his weight around, and he's obviously growing up all the time. But I loved this performance. Yes, he was given a very good ride. I think Ryan was having a spectacular 90 minutes, as he often does. But Illinois is a fantastic horse to get the better of. He's got some solid form in the book. Dear old King's Gambit, he just looked like he was rolling around a little bit in the closing stages. But he's still achieved plenty this season. I expect the connections there were just gutted that Aidan brought over some really talented individuals. But for him to go out and carry a penalty, I know he's a big horse, but I still thought it was him showing that, yeah, he is maturing, he is growing up, and with it he is becoming the finished article, because he has still looked quite green, but I thought he looked a little bit more finished during last week.
Yeah,
made a lovely 4-year-old, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
I like you, I fell in love with him, looking at him in the parade ring and down to post in the at Epsom in the Derby. I just thought he was just a fantastic model. The one horse I wanted to take from the race, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully he got his classic at the Curragh.
Yeah.
And I think he did. You know, he's obviously advertised the form of Sunway. I think is probably a viable bet against the raft of Ballydor runners that are going to ship up at Doncaster the second week of September.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, Aidan O'Brien obviously dominates the market for the St Ledger. 9 of the remaining 15 in the St Ledger are all trained by Aidan O'Brien. But
you'd be surprised if this lad went though.
Yeah, so he's likely to head to the Irish Champion Stakes next. Apparently 8-1 with Bet365, and then head on to the Arc, for which is double figures at 10-1. But I really loved the performance of Illinois. I know who was beaten that day. If you look back, Continuous won the Great Voltigeur before winning the St Ledger last year. And then if you go back to 2018, Kew Gardens finished 3rd in the Great Voltigeur before winning the St Ledger. So just because you're beaten in the Great Voltigeur doesn't mean you can't go on to win the St Ledger.
Not when you beat a neck.
I think the trip is the thing with him. He won on his debut, but he's actually been beaten 5 times between 1 mile and 2 and 1 mile and 4. And the one time that he obviously got his victory this season was in the Queen's Vase over 1 mile and 6. So going back up in trip, I thought Illinois is probably the one to take from the Ledger, and he's now 5-2 favourite.
Totally agree. You know, he's tackled 1 mile and 6 once, hasn't he, in the Queen's Vase and won. So yeah, totally agree with you. I think he just that long straight at Doncaster is just going to play to his strength, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Another supplemented winner. The lads obviously made the right decisions over the week. Was content to win the Yorkshire Oaks. Hayley, we've talked about Ryan Moore obviously having a brilliant time and brilliant riding at York. She was keen in the early stages.
Say that again.
But she stayed on well over that 1.5 mile trip.
I know, and I want to ask you how. How did she stay on? How did she keep going?
I know.
And then she looked like going past the line. She was quite up for carrying on as well. And you think of You Got To Me, who just seems to be able to run and go, and she's had a wonderful season as well. I just thought, how on earth can she be that strong and still finish off the race like that and obviously reverse the form? I think it was an incredible performance from her. Maybe they'll be a bit more guarded on her next start if she is going to be as on it as that. Like, she just never let up for a moment.
No. It's rare you see Ryan run away with like that up the inside.
There's a when you do see him sitting against one, you know that he's really sort of trying to slow them down, and I almost don't recognise him. I remember watching him on a horse at Ascot this year, win a race that Richard Hannon's done really well in over the years, and I remember having to sort of look down in the race. I knew it was Ryan, but I was thinking, is that Ryan? Like, you know, he kind of rarely has to really use his strength, but he did on her, and I was blown away that she kept going. Incredible performance from her.
It's a good job he's the fittest in the weighing room, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that right? The bleep tests and everything, he does ridiculous levels, doesn't he?
He is incredibly fit, definitely fitter than I am anyway. So,
only marginally fitter than me, I presume.
Only just.
So, like, talking about targets going forward, she's got everything open to her, really, hasn't she? 20-1 for the Arc with Bet365, 6-1 for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mares Turf, 5-1 for the Fillies and Mares on Champions Day. Like, where would you be aiming her at? Or
Probably
do you
somewhere,
just dance every dance?
Probably somewhere where she's going to get guaranteed a pace, I think, to just try and help her drop her head a little bit. I I think she's not been overworked, has she?
No.
I could see her ending up in America in the autumn, most definitely, because I think those tracks would suit her out there, and the gallop they go, that might be ideal for her. But I mean, Hayley's covered it beautifully. To see a horse do that in the formative stages of any race, not least a Group 1, and then to win as she did, it was quite a remarkable performance. You know, quite extraordinary. You just don't see it, do you?
No.
You know, I should imagine that you know, everyone who back content at the start of the race would probably just, you know, ripping up the tickets halfway round, because you think, well, she's never ever going to get home after doing that, especially with some very good strong stayers. Sad to see Emily Upjohn sort of emptying out when you know, she's moved through the race absolutely beautifully. Wouldn't mind seeing her come back in trip, if I'm honest. You know, flat track, fast ground, mile and a quarter, slightly more patient. You know, maybe that might be the key for her, but.
She was out in front for a long time.
Yeah, I feel a little bit for Kieran Schumacher this year, because obviously a lot of the Gosden horses are underperforming a touch, or they're just on the way down after having, you know, tremendous careers, and he's having to bite the bullet for this. Maybe that's why Frankie went to America. He could see what was coming.
Definitely. I think what you were talking about with like the Galileo side of things, you know, the quality there. If you think about Content's mother, Mecca's Angel, there's so much pace there. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do something pretty extraordinary and just go, actually, let's just drop her back down in trip and see what she can do. You know, are there other avenues to explore? Is she getting faster as she's getting older? And is it just she's a bit of a freak in that she stays as well? So I don't know. I think they might even try something a bit more extravagant and drop her right back down.
Well, she's won a Group 1 now, so, you know, why not?
And obviously her performances over a mile and a half will give a good line on what Bedtime Story could achieve next year, obviously being the same line. She's, obviously we'll go to her performance later on. It was slightly underwhelming, but the fact that Content is staying on a mile and a half will open up some avenues next year. I just thought one thing to note, the record of 3-year-olds in that Yorkshire Oaks is really good. They've now won 8 out of the last 10 renewals. So just a little trend for next year when we come to cover this race might be to obviously have a second look at those 3-year-olds. Sam, I'm going to come to you for the Lonsdale Cup.
Okay.
Vauban, I've been slightly disappointed with him so far this season, but he looked right back to it, and all roads kind of lead back to the Melbourne Cup, you'd imagine. He
did. I think, listening to the quotes of Rich Ritchie, that I think Willie Mullins had spoken to him on the morning of the race and said, look, we have no excuses today. I think Rich was a bit reluctant to commit to Vauban's chance, because he felt that the trip would just expose any stamina flaws. And you can look at it one of two ways, can't you? Whether the petrol gauge was flickering in the closing stages, or whether he was just dossing in front. I don't know, really. I mean, I suppose only William Buick can tell you that truthfully. Great run from Alnir. I mean, Tom Clover had a great week, obviously, with the Melrose win. And, you know, this lad who was second in the Dubai Gold Cup, you know, running such a big race here on his debut, I thought that was a brilliant run. It was a good performance from Vauban. It was just another sort of example, really, of Irish stayers through the week. You know, Extensio winning the handicap, Vauban winning. What was the other one? Magical Zoe, obviously, in the Ebor. Second in the Equator. Could possibly have won with a slightly more economical ride in the Melrose. So, you know, they just really carried all before them over the staying trips, didn't they, all throughout the week. And also, obviously, you had the high-profile winners of Coolmore as well over those staying trip, the mile and a half races. So it was good effort from Vauban. I mean, obviously, he's going to be Melbourne Cup bound again, you would think, with perhaps a run in between. He travelled beautifully through the race. A couple of disappointments in the race. Point Lonsdale, he was poor. Alcazib was easy to back. So you wonder whether it was the strongest renewal you've ever seen. But it was, you know, it was a pretty good effort from the front too, I thought. Yeah,
Gregory's a funny one. It's like he gets outpaced over 2 miles and then didn't stay the Ascot Gold Cup trip. You'd be banging your head against the wall, I think.
It's hard, though, isn't it, to go out there and try and make all in a staying race, especially, I think, at York. You know, it's pretty flat. Well, it's very flat. It's not like trying to steal it around a place like Goodwood or Windsor or something where you can, you know, predominantly front. I know it's the place to be, but going out there for that distance.
They stack up behind you, don't they, a little bit?
Yeah, you're there to be shot at. And Vauban, I thought, was as probably, to get him back after travelling him all that way, I think they've basically worked back this season from the Melbourne Cup. They've made it quite clear. They've got unfinished business there. And I just think that they will have a much better idea of how much work to put into the horse going into this year's race at Flemington, because he was clearly not where they wanted him to be. And so I think they're only going to build on what they did last year. And I think you'll get a better performance from him. I really do. One thing that Willie Mullins is a real thinker, and he'd have analysed and thought, right, yeah, we've done this in the past, we've done well in the past, like your Max Steinweights and that, but this lad needs training differently. And it's so hard. That for me is the beauty of a trainer that's, that is a genius like Willie Mullins and Aidan O'Brien. They get them to peak at the right time. They didn't quite get it right with Vauban last year in the Melbourne Cup, so I think we'll see him out again on the cusp of the quarantine cut-off, and then you'll have an improved run. Whether or not he's good enough, which obviously depends on what weight is going to get allocated, but he seems to be showing the form that saying, yeah, I'm as good as what I was last year, and I hope for everyone's sake that they win the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, I think the thought was that he was over there for too long. I think he did a piece of work about 10 days before, which was unbelievable, and then was a bit flat come the race. So yeah, I think he's going to go out later this year. He's 10-1 favourite with Bet365
which is
currently
short.
for that.
That is a short price for a Melbourne Cup,
especially when you don't know which mark he's going to get
in
as
August.
well.
Or
I'd
draw.
like that.
Or draw.
Exactly.
And they get full fields.
Yeah.
You saw last year it was rammed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To that first bend.
That's right. Yeah.
Talking of the draw, that might be what won the Nunthorpe for Bradsell.
Oh.
There was a little bit of a draw bias, a track bias through York that week, but Bradsell, it was brilliant to see him back because obviously he had an injury earlier on, lightly raced, came back in France, but I was impressed with his performance there.
Yeah, he was exhilarating, wasn't he? I thought it was a tremendous performance. I mean, obviously, I've seen plenty of Pontos through the winter. Know how quick he is, probably the quickest 4 furlong horse in training. He held on to win one of the carnival races when the ground was pretty quick. At one of the meetings, and he's run creditably since in good company as well. Just doesn't quite get home, and he ran a blinder here, but he was also fantastic, setting the head of the peloton really for Bradsell to run him down. And I don't think Holly Dore could have asked for any more really. The way the race set up for her was beautiful. Believing ran a blinder, didn't she? Down the stand side. I thought Starless ran very well back to 5, another sort of DRC graduate. And I don't think there was any real excuses for the Australian filly, but as we know, that York track, if you get off and away, as we saw in last year's race as well with the Living the Dream, you get out there and dominate, you can just keep going, and that's what Bradsell did. And all power to Archie Watson, strengthened his reputation as a brilliant trainer of sprinters, I think.
Yeah, I really like this horse. Won the Coventry at 2, won the King's Stand at 3, and then has won this year. Fab horse.
He is quite a character as well. He was throwing his weight around beforehand. He's quite a handful, but he's got so much class, which is great. And I actually got a real kick seeing Holly Doyle and Archie Watson have this success together. And obviously Victorious Racing saw Fauzi Nass leading the horse in as well, which was great. He's been very passionate, did well training himself for a bit. I don't know if he still holds a licence or not.
Yeah, he does, yeah. He had runners in Dubai through the winter as well. Obviously had great record in Bahrain, and obviously George Scott's done exceptionally well for him as well.
Yeah, I just don't think he can hold a licence in this country because I don't think he's in the country for long enough or something, which is a shame because I think he used to love having runners in this country. But anyway, good to see him come in with Bradsell. But just watching the partnership of Holly Doyle and Archie grow and flourish over the years, I actually really enjoyed it. Not just because I like the horse, but I got a real kick out seeing Holly go out there, give the horse a gutsy ride, and she has got a profile. And I don't want to go down the route of a female jockey because she's beyond that now. But she has got a high profile. There is a young crowd going to York, and it is just lovely to see someone like Holly coming out on top. And she's been voted 3rd in the Sports Personality of the Year. She's got such a big profile, and I think that was her 10th Group 1 win. It's just great that she's still established, she's holding her own at the top level. So I really enjoyed seeing Holly win that race with Archie. He's been a huge supporter of hers. And the horse is another story to come back from a fractured fetlock only in February. He's tough, he's hard as nails, so that's great bit of rehab as well.
I think it's just testament to Holly. We just never even
No.
regard her as a female
No,
jockey.
exactly,
She's just a
yeah,
jockey,
that's
she,
it, yeah.
not just a jockey, but a bloody good one,
Really good jockey, yeah.
Safi Osborne, Joanna Mason,
Yeah.
there's a,
It's not even a conversation now, is it?
No, it isn't.
No.
It shouldn't be.
No.
But it's brilliant, and fair play to Hayley Turner because she had paved the way, and also obviously predecessors to her. But yeah, I mean, she's just a brilliant rider, and yeah, the race sat up very well for her. And fair play to George Bowie and believing, he's managed to keep that horse just ticking along. Had some, been some tough parties throughout the summer, but produced a great form.
And taking her to Hong Kong was obviously
Yeah.
a huge shout. But it's proven that she's of that,
Up to that
calibre.
class, yeah.
But that race, I think the Brits have got an awful record in
Yeah,
Hong Kong.
I think the
that
ground
she
went against her
tried.
as well, didn't it? That week, it was just everything went wrong, could have gone wrong.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll have some more ambitious plans for her that will work out better than the last international.
She'd be
sprint.
interesting when she's in America, perhaps,
Yeah,
if they
that's
freshen her
true,
up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Probably more so than the winner. The winner's now 7-1 for the Breeders' Cup turf sprint, but I think he was one of the horses that went out last year and wasn't allowed to run.
Right. I remember
With
that.
obviously the stewarding over there. So whether they risk going out there again this year
Yeah,
would be,
with the
Of
Abbey.
course, yeah.
would be another question.
The Abbey, probably.
Yeah, we talk around obviously Archie Watson, a superb training performance. John and Sean Quinn had a brilliant week. 2 runners, 2 winners. Breege,
Yeah.
33-1 winner of the City of York Stakes.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't see that coming. I
No.
didn't see her as being the one to come out on top, especially with the performances we've seen from the likes of Audience this year. He's just been a revelation. I'm not sure if everything went his way. He looked like he was travelling really well in the race. I don't know if something upset him from the incident in the stalls, which was
Yeah, I
obviously
think so,
frustrating.
yeah.
But she was fantastic. She's put in some good runs this year. She's been busy. I mean, to come out and cruise forward like that in the closing stages, it's great for the owner breeder as well. I just thought it was a very taking performance, massive pot. Probably hasn't done any favours for the race trying to get this
Group 1 status.
upgrade to Group 1. Wonderful prize money. So I hope that she'll be able to fly the flag for the City of York race and carry on and win at the top level this season and pick something else up. So obviously it was quite a small field.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite the depth of the race that you had at Newbury in the Lockinge when he won. The Goodwood race was arguably a bit stronger as well. I don't know. So he has underperformed the winner, unfortunately. He wasn't disgraced, but he wasn't on his tip-top form.
Yeah, no, it was a bit of a shame. Obviously, Kinross came out, and then Lake Forest withdrawn, and Audience running below
that
par.
upset Audience, didn't it?
Yeah.
So they got a ready-made excuse there. But I felt for Jason Hart, to be honest. I missed the storyline that why he didn't ride.
Yeah.
Was he suspended? Or?
No. He went to a different track to ride in a group race.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they thought that had more of a chance than a 33-1 shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be
Should
interesting
understand.
walking back in on a Monday morning for work morning.
Yeah.
Cheers, boss. Thanks very much
Yeah.
for that. Yeah, brilliant from Colin Keane, and a good run from Vavatino as well, who we saw plenty of in Dubai through the winter, and I should imagine he'll be heading back out there as well with conditions suiting him. Fair play to John Quinn. I caught up with him at Goodwood. So how's the season going? He said, yeah, we've had a fair few individual winners, but we haven't got any stars. I think Sean reiterated as much on Racing TV.
Yeah.
But to run 2 horses at that meeting in 2 of the unlikeliest races to throw up a winner for them, perhaps, a big field sprint.
Yeah.
And a race where they're 33-1, and to come away with 2 winners was magnificent for the team.
Yeah. Yeah, the other was JM Jungle. There's talks of them supplementing Breege for the Prix de la Forêt.
Yeah.
Which, fair enough, you won this big pot.
Yeah,
Why
I
not
think
go
the
for
owner's
it?
got a couple of quid.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's probably worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah. Some more owners with a couple of quid will be the connections of Magical Zoe.
Yes. You must have napped this, surely.
I put him up on the show. Gary O'Brien also napped him on the show last week. Yeah, brilliant performance. Well backed as well. 10-1 into 11-2 kind of throughout the day. And yeah, just
few of those de Bromhead horses get smashed off the boards, don't they? And a few of those Cheltenham winners move quite sizably in the market. I think that, Henry comes on afterwards and it's great, it's magnificent, it's fabulous, it's smashing, but I think they very much do know what they have going into these races. I touched on it earlier that the sort of not dramatic, but the influence that the Irish trainers had in the staying races
Yeah.
at York last week, and this was another example. And
not just York though. Like
No.
Henry had his first runner down at Goodwood this year. Never had a runner before, and again manages to win. You think of Royal Ascot.
good point.
Like they're just.
Well, his record in the UK this season is brilliant. Like this was the third winner from five runners this season. UK on the flat.
Yeah.
Better strike rate than
Yeah,
Willie
and
Mullins.
of course, York earlier on with Rachel Blackmore.
Turnham
Yeah.
and Dearman
Yeah.
as
And
well.
we're entering into Cesarewitch season
Yeah.
soon, aren't we, as well?
Yeah.
These staying races. So definitely worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, one for the Cesarewitch. Yeah, it's worth watching this race back. Hip Hop Del War for Willie Mullins. Just go back, finished fifth, beaten 4.5 lengths, but just tries to track through Billy Lee. Doesn't get the clearest of runs. He's now 12-1 with Bet365 for the Cesarewitch at Newmarket. Definitely caught the eye. And obviously we can't touch on the race without obviously sending our condolences to connections of Crystal Delight. That obviously was horrible what happened during the race there.
Yeah, that was dreadful, really, because he'd been a fantastic horse for them this year. You know, and I mean, obviously Tom Marquand must have passed all the doctor's tests and things like that, but you know, it's strange, isn't it, that he can then go on and ride after such a, you know, a hammering fall like that.
Yeah.
I wonder whether further down the line, whether there are more protocols that come into play, as they are with rugby, football, you know, cricket, whatever. You know, you get a little dink on the helmet. It doesn't even have to be a heavy one with a, you know, with a fast ball. It can be a spinner or whatever. And you have to have the concussion test, and the helmet has to be replaced, and all this sort of stuff. So. I don't know, it might be one for future though.
Do you know if the procedure's any different with on the flat in comparison to over jumps, or is it the same test?
It's the same. That's it. And I think they take a lot of science from the rugby scene,
Fair enough.
which have invested heavily in research. A lot of funding has gone into it. And the procedure now is so stringent. You can't probably do what I'd have been doing 15 years ago, where it was a bit of a dumbed down way of doing a concussion test. It is very intense now.
Yeah.
But then you do sometimes get delayed concussion, don't you? And I don't know. I played a couple of hours of tennis yesterday. Yesterday afternoon felt absolutely fine. Woke up this morning, I feel stiff as a board. Today is where I feel rubbish. And I play tennis all the time this time of year, but it is just from that intensity, and obviously it's not a fall, but you feel worse the next day, and you feel your bruisings come out, hematoma, and then you do get delayed concussion, which is a thing. Like you might be fine straight after, but I do feel as though the doctors are
on it now.
Are on it, and they are very strict because the research is there, the knowledge is there. So I know in the grand scheme of things, he hasn't ridden, he's not riding till midweek now, a few days after the fall. Didn't go down to Goodwood, missed out on winners. It's probably been a painful few days. And if he could, he would be there riding. He will still need to pass a doctor's test. Whether or not they'll do a concussion test before he next rides, I don't know, because he wasn't knocked out. He took a bit of a battering, but he was always compos mentis. And one thing in the sport is that doctors are there within seconds. They are following you around in a car. They know if you've been knocked out or not. I could have a fall on the gallops, be knocked out. No one would know, because by the time someone's got off their horse or rung to the office to come and get someone to tend to me on the floor, I might have been seeing stars, and no one will know. And you go in, you're fine, and then a few days later, you might be caught up with. So maybe there will be a slightly different procedure in place going forward. But again, I'm sure the research is there, and delayed concussion and a way of checking them. So maybe there is going to be the opportunity for them to explore a different procedure, but he will get thoroughly checked. He's got that amber entry next to his name, and he'll be assessed pretty intense.
I think the rugby one is you count back from 100. I think I'd struggle to do that even if I hadn't been knocked out, to be honest. Under pressure, most definitely.
And the tests that are there, they go on. It's not just a 15-minute. They are intense. You sit with a nurse going through a concussion test, and this is done repeatedly every year, and then it's compared every time you have a bang on the head.
That's good to know.
And I know jockeys that have been off and they haven't been able to pass a concussion test to come and ride, and it's gone on for months. So it works. The procedure that's there in place, Dr. Jerry Hill doesn't rest on his laurels. It's pretty difficult.
Good.
So.
Sam, I'll come to you for any other
Okay.
performances. 2-year-olds particularly caught my eye. The Lion in Winter winning the Acomb Stakes,
Yeah.
his Bedtime Story, and Henry Matisse over in Ireland. Anything that really took your fancy?
I thought that was another great ride from Ryan on the Lion in Winter.
Yeah.
You look at the breakdown of the race, the sectionals, etc., it very much paid to be prominent and dictating, and certainly, you know, he clocked the fastest sectional that day, all bar Star of Lady M, I think, the sprinter who won by half the track. So that was a really good performance. I thought Wimbledon Hawkeye caught the eye again.
Yeah.
I thought he was a Zetland Stakes type horse for me. Mile and a Quarter looks like he wants that all day long. Whether they go that far as a 2-year-old or not, I don't know. But that could be the type of race for him, because he's finished off twice now in decent races over 7, where he's just got going in the latter stages. I was very, very taken with See the Fire.
Yeah.
Her sectionals to win were extraordinary, really. I don't think the overall time was anything special. And for her to quicken up and win as she did, I think that was, I dare say, a Group 1 performance, but she's certainly worthy of being pitched in at the top level now. That continued a really good week for Balding and Asheen Murphy, didn't it?
Yeah, she just for note, she's 8-1 for the Sun Chariot with Bet 365 currently. The Lion in Winter, 8-1 favourite for the 2,000 guineas, 7-1 for the Derby.
Yeah, I almost prefer him a little bit to Henry Matisse,
Yeah.
if I'm honest. Although I do think, though, those horses in Ireland, in those small field races, Henry Matisse and Bedtime Story that we saw, they're sort of a hostage to fortune, really. They can't be that explosive because they're small field races and they just quicken for 2 furlongs. You know, the overall times are poor, the finishing percentages are quite high, which means that they're literally doing all their running in the last 2 furlongs. They're jogging around for 4 furlongs or 5 furlongs. So I don't think you get a true reflection of them. And you can't tell me that Bedtime Story has been hard trained going into that race at the Curragh. It's just a prep race to build to the Moy Glare and then on and beyond, isn't it?
Yeah.
You literally, Sam, taking the words out of my mouth, because that is one thing I think gets overlooked and underestimated sometimes with Aidan O'Brien, is he's getting them to peak at the races that matter.
Yeah.
I think probably August Rodin's not a great example of a horse, because he can be a bit erratic at times. But like when White Birch got the better of him, then we saw him come out and win at Royal Ascot. They were getting him to peak. You go back through a whole list of horses. Found, when she bounced back to win the Art, really impressive. I don't know, that you could go on and on and on. And I think it's important to remember there's races that really matter, that really count.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's all about, you cannot keep a horse going. If you can, they're a machine. No, they're not. That doesn't exist. So you've got to back off them, and win the ones that really count. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah, workmanlike, but don't worry, there will be more to come. And if the stablemate beat her, that's probably wasn't going to be the end of the world, was it?
No, you just hope that there's more competition in the Moy Glare than what there was in this, because it is always a shame to see 16 to 1 on.
But the one thing about Ballydor, they don't seem particularly bothered about protecting an unbeaten record, do they?
No.
They've had 2-year-olds that have run 10 times, been beaten 5 or 6, and then gone and won a Dewhurst or a Middle Park at the back end of the season, and
Well, it was a year they had was it Minding, Alice Springs, and Ballydor? They just
ran them.
Just run them.
Yeah,
just run
absolutely.
And they even got them mixed up.
Yeah. That was the year after.
Or was that the year
was Mother
after?
Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look back and think, gosh, and then, letting them swap around all the time.
Yeah.
And the only other one was Scenic. I was very taken with Scenic.
Yeah, won the Gallagher
I think
Stakes.
everyone did it.
Yeah.
And Thunder Run, I thought, was definitely a candidate for best ride of the week. If you look at the sectionals and the closing percentages, to make all round there, and to the finishing percentages around about 100%, was a superbly effective and economical ride from David Egan.
Yeah.
Enjoying a good season, David.
Yeah, certainly is. Yeah. Anything else for you, Hayley, before we stop?
Gosh, there were quite a few from the weekend. I suppose Diligently, good to see that horse win a sales race. Seems to be progressing. I thought Clive Cox has done a great job with that horse, so that would have been a standout. Angelo Buonarroti, I was looking forward to seeing him line up at Goodwood. He's kind of gone back and forth between trainers, but he couldn't run at Goodwood because he had a sore foot. I was pleased it was a bruised foot. It was something as simple as that. And Rafe Beckett, he's with the right man there to... Well, no disrespect to who he was with, but he seems to... Rafe's a great trainer, so I'm pleased he's got him. And hopefully he'll be an exciting horse. Obviously, you're always looking at the Convivial, one of the most exciting maidens probably have all year.
Certainly the richest, isn't it?
Yeah, and he just looked Tank, so I thought he'd be quite an exciting horse to follow for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And then Ice Max down at Goodwood, who won the Celebration Mile. He is a gelding, but I think for the rest of the season, if he's going to get a bit of cut in the ground, he's going to be really exciting. I think he's got some smart top-level entries over the mile. But I think that's a really good bit of form. I don't want to underestimate that. Poker Face was in second. Royal Dress was back in third. She did disappoint me. I think Billy just looked after her after a while. I've got a lot of respect and time for her. And obviously, Sonny Liston didn't quite fire either. So I just thought it was only a small field, and he was quite keen early on. I thought it was a really taking performance, and Poker Face was well backed, and he got the better of him. So he was a standout. I was delighted to see Quinault come back. I've loved the way that horse has been campaigned by Stuart Williams. And then I was at Windsor on Saturday night, and my Prospero, an outstanding looking individual. I thought it was a really good competitive renewal of the Winter Hill Stakes, and there was a deluge of rain that came, softened the ground, and he looks quite appealing to me for the Champion Stakes. I thought it was a good renewal. I was there, obviously, mentioned to you guys, watching Nova. She ran well against the boys, so I'd like to see her back against her own sex in time.
My Prosperia 20-1 for the Champion Stakes with Bet365. You can see why they sent him to start. Obviously, Infertile's come back, and I thought they've done quite a good job to get a kind of a
beautiful
good win
stamp
out of it.
of a horse, really lovely.
And then like you said, with Quinault, I just love that horse. Ninth career win, first off 59, now a two-time listed winner. 3 from 3 under Marco Gianni as well.
Very easy to label people as underrated, isn't it, when they're not sort of on your radar? But Stuart Williams just doing it year in, year out.
Like for him to have quietly just notched up over 1,000 winners, I thought that was a astounding effort.
999 of them well backed.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very smart stable.
Huge stable. Brilliant trainer.
Yeah. And then just one last one. I was really taken with a Strange. Winning the maiden at Goodwood on Sunday. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch for Cheveley Park. Really exciting going forward. Right, that was the end of Race and Recap. Before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It's available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 AM on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you out at the bigger odds. Full terms and conditions can be found on the website. Right, the highlight of this coming weekend will be the Solario Stakes. We can't have 15 entries. It's Field of Gold that heads the market, 3.5 length winner at Newmarket of a maiden last time for the Gosdens and Juddmonte. You've got Seagulls 11, who probably brings in that group form from the Superlative Stakes. And then a couple of impressive novice winners as well. Where are you looking for this, Sam?
Yeah, well, my first point of call was a Charlie Appleby runner, but unfortunately there isn't one. He's a race that he's farmed in recent times. I was very taken with Field of Gold, as I'm sure everybody was. I thought he stepped up quite markedly on that Doncaster performance. He was fairly easy to back that day, stronger in the market on the July course second time, and put the race to bed. Travelled very sweetly at the head of affairs, didn't he, and looked pretty uncomplicated, shifting right a little bit in the closing stages, but thought it was a really solid effort. But I think a lot of these have sort of recorded the same level, if that's possible to say that. I thought Seagulls 11 did well. He's a Galileo Gold, and he ran behind Ancient Truth, who picked up in great style to win that race. Otherwise, Seagulls 11 could have been recording his second career win. I think the one that I liked going forward was Royal Playwright, who won at Salisbury. Now, he's eloped to Vega. He only won a 7 furlong novice race at Salisbury, but that race has been used as a stepping stone by some really nice horses in the past. Pile Driver, I think, won that race. And he was well on top of the line. I thought he was a little bit green, a little bit inexperienced, but with the Murphy and Balding combination going so well in the last few days, I've sort of sided with him a little bit. So I think Field of Gold will probably be an honourable and creditable favourite and a justified one, but I think Royal Playwright can go forward and hopefully bustle him up a little bit.
Yeah, available around 5-1 at the time we're recording. Hayley, have you?
Well, I've mentioned Brighton already at the top. An avid Seagulls fan, because I grew up in Brighton. So we've got Seagulls 11 for a lot of the guys that are now playing for Brighton Hove Albion. I thought this horse has done very little wrong, has got a bit of experience as well for Hugo Palmer. So as much as that horse on my shortlist, I'm intrigued at Maturi Bay. He's got a really smart pedigree, and also from the family that he's from, they've actually done really well in America. And I just think it's mad for Rafe Beckett to line a horse up at Leicester in novice company, and then throw the horse into deep waters here, and has got some really smart future Group 1 entries. So I was very taken by the performance. Obviously well fancied as well. We've seen loads of success this season for Valmont, Valley Lynch and Ecurie de Champs, who obviously bred and stuck with owning this horse. 500,000 guineas he costs, but he's very well related. So I'm hoping if he can get a nice draw. I think there has been a bit of rain around. I don't think that'll be a problem because it's by Lope de Vega. They haven't rushed him after buying him from the breeze up. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see if he can build on what was a really smart debut.
Okay, a couple of the unexposed runners then for the guys in the Solario Stakes. We'll then move on to the Atalanta Stakes. Again, 15 entries. It's Tamfana that currently heads to the market at 11 to 8. Obviously fourth in the 1,000 guineas, went up in trip, didn't quite stay in the Grand Prix de Paris, now back down to a mile. You've got Doha, who's impeccably bred, see the stars out. Trev, who obviously won at Royal Ascot. Bright Thunder in there as well for Carl Burke. Hayley, I'll come to you first on this one.
Well, yeah, Tamfana easing in grade, so this is her penalty kick if she's going to be good enough to win. She's in the right position, she's well clear on ratings. Obviously, there's a nice pull at the weight for age as well. There's so much in her favour. She was just a bit too keen in the Grand Prix de Paris. Like you said, she probably didn't really quite get home over a mile and a half. It was her first try at the distance and she just didn't relax. So there's so much to like about her profile going in. Probably won't represent the best value, and she takes a huge chunk out of the market, I think, and that'll be the case come declarations. But I thought Doha ran a really good race in the Nassau. She seems to be progressing. Obviously, it was a big step up in class, first time in a Group 1 from the Royal Ascot, second enlisted company after that Royal Ascot success. So I think there'll be a good run in her. And I was saying to you that they have got a few options, that they might take her abroad as well. She's got an entry in a Grade 1 in America on the 14th of September. So, they obviously think a lot of her, and I think she'll be a force to be reckoned with. So, obviously she's got more weight to carry than Tamfana, but I think it looks great. And I could go on all day about Doha, who's been... about Doom, who's finally run a bit better. Again, another one with a lovely pedigree as well. I really liked her ahead of the Valiant Stakes. And then you've got the usuals, Naomi Lapaglia, who actually didn't run too bad at Ascot recently as well. Julia Augusta's in there as well. You've got the usual names floating around. And the form of Stop the Cavalry, who's in there at the entry stage. That's pretty solid. I think she's got an entry in Germany as well. So there are a few other international prestigious races that they'll be. We don't know if they'll be lining up. So yeah, I'll probably be keen on Doha. Yeah,
currently available at 6 to 1 with Bet365. Sam, I think you might be in agreement.
Yeah, look, Tamfana, everyone can see her form and she's been priced accordingly. And if she gets a decent draw, there's no reason why she shouldn't take all the beating here. Everyone saw her run in the Guineas. Perhaps. She's been off the radar a little bit because she's raced in France a couple of times over trips, probably in excess of her best. But back to a mile here at this level, it should be a good stepping stone for her to move on to better things further down the season. Doha, I thought, did really well, only beaten 4 lengths in the Nassau. That race has already thrown up the winner with See the Fire. She was down on that rail as well, which I'm not sure was the place to be that week, particularly. Sort of Ryan dictated again on Opera Singer, and the race didn't go to plan really for Doha, but I mean she was a 28 to 1 chance in the Nassau. This is a big drop in class for her. If she does run sort of 6 to 1 each way, it's a bit of a coward's bet, but it'd probably be the one I'd have against Tamfana. Yeah,
we'll then go across to Beverley for the Beverley Bullet. Wide open renewal, 9 to 2 the field currently with Bet365. Democracy Dilemma, who ran really well, finished 4th
Try
at York.
That when you've had a pint. Yeah.
Clarendon House, who fluffed his start last time in the Nunthorpe, lost all chances. Next in at 5 to 1. Comanche Falls, just a brilliant old warrior at 5 to 1. And then Blue Storm, who's really interesting. Gemma Tutty finished second at Royal Ascot in that handicap, taken on his elders. Sam, I'll come to you.
Yeah, for me, very tough to have a sort of an anti-post bet in a race like this until I've seen the draw. If you had a gun to my head, probably Democracy Dilemma at the top of the market, but at least comes here in good nick off the back of that York run. And there's a horse that always clocks decent speed figures on my ratings anyway, so probably go with him. But yeah, it'd be a no bet race until I've seen the draw.
Yeah.
Can I just go with Robert Cow, and then that covers a good couple of bases?
Yeah, Robert Cow coupled.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually thought that Gemma Tutty's Son of Blue Point proved to be really useful throughout the season, really. First run back, I was at Chester, ran really well, wasn't beaten far, then managed to score on Derby Day, I think it was running. A really nice performance there, stepped up again. I thought ran a huge race at Ascot in what was a pretty competitive handicap behind Pilgrim. And I just think he's been doing really well, seems to be thriving since joining the stable, and with each run has got better and better. So yeah, another step up in grade. It's a great race, love the Beverley Bullet, and I just think he's a bit of an up-and-coming individual. Seems to be finding his feet. He's got a lovely pedigree, seems to be versatile ground-wise, so I don't think it will really matter what's going to be thrown up. It seems a bit hard to predict the weather at the weekend at the minute.
Yeah.
Lovely day today. I'm sure would be due rain just tomorrow. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Blue Storm. I think Gemma does incredibly well with a small team. Doesn't matter what trip they're running over. I think she's really made a good name for herself as a trainer, improving horses that she's acquired. I'd love to see her get some better stock from the get-go. Actually, she's done really well. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Blue Storm.
Excellent. Just a couple for me to note over the weekend. Obviously, currently haven't got prices. The 4:10 at Sandown, the fillies maiden over 7 furlongs. This is just one to have your trackers ready for. Ballet Slippers is jocked up for Aidan O'Brien with William Buick on board. Her form so far is brilliant. She finished third to Red Letter at the Curragh and then finished behind Falling Snow, who's the daughter of Winter, on her next start. She herself is really well bred. Dubarry out of Magical. You've got Flight in there for Ollie Sangster as well, so she brings some solid form to the table. And then you've got the likes of Shadwell, Sheikh Mohammed Abeid, and then one for Rafe Beckett as well, who are really well bred. So yeah, make sure you definitely watch the 4:10 at Sandown on Saturday, because yeah, you've got some really nice fillies in that going forward. And then over in Ireland, the 3:25 at the Curragh, the Group 3 Snow Fairies Fillies Stakes. Lumiere Rock takes a real drop in class. Now, she's contested Group 1s since winning a Group 2 last season. She won that by 3 lengths, beating Jackie O that day. To give some context on her form so far, since that victory, she finished a length behind Blue Rosen last year. She finished 3 lengths behind Inspiral at the Breeders' Cup. And then this year, she's chased home the likes of White Birch, Auguste Rodin, Blue Stocking and Opera Singer. So she's been set some really hard tasks. She drops down to Group 3 level on Saturday in the Snow Fairy Filly Stakes. So yeah, there's a couple from me just to obviously then note for the weekend. Sam, anything else for you?
Just one other on the Beverley card, actually. Becoming a little bit of a Beverley specialist, Walter Hartwright. Probably about second or third favourite. I think 5-2, about 365. I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
Takes on Quietness, who's enjoying a good run of it at the moment for Marcus Trigoni. I thought Quietness got a bit of an easy last time. They let Joe Fanning walk the dog in front, and I'm not sure about the level of that form. Whereas Walter Hartwright has gone from 60 to 95. I think the stable have done a brilliant job placing and also training him. Saxon Warrior, he's just improved and thrived. And if we do have a bit of rain, it won't inconvenience him, because I think he goes with a bit of cut as well as fast ground. Good, tough, durable, middle distance horse who loves Beverley. What's not to like?
What's not to like? Anything else for you, Hayley?
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm hoping that we'll see Yennefer at Sandown on Saturday for Harriet Bethel. She's had this horse a while now, but she seems to have him in better shape than ever. I just wanted to give her a shout out, because I've watched this horse win quite cosily at Chester recently in what I thought was a pretty competitive race. He will need, I think, a career best to win if he is to come out on top at the weekend. But it's not down the road for her, Sandown, and I hope that this is going to be the right race for him to continue this upward curve. But I was very taken by him winning at Chester just recently. So I'm hoping he'll continue what's been a fine season. He missed a big chunk of time off from the track. I think he went wrong after the start of the flat season, after the Doncaster meeting last year, and I thought that's probably him gone. Because I remember he'd won at York, and then he followed up. He was, you know, in great form. So obviously had a setback. He's come back this season, and he just seems to be running really well. And his last couple of outings have been improved. Like he lined up against Tolstoy earlier on in the season at York. He got the better of him. Then he reversed the form. Then he ran a lot closer to him, and then he came out and won. So I just think he seems to be a horse on the up. He's had nearly a month off, and I think that I'm hoping he'll be ready to go and put in a career best. I don't think the handicappers got too carried away. I think it was a £4 rise. Yeah. So Asheen McSweeney's been getting on well. They have been claiming. So ideally, I think they just need a really good £5 claimer. If I was an agent, I'd be getting on the phone for a good £5 claimer. And Yennefer, he's a horse in my tracker for the weekend.
He's also in at Chester as well, isn't he? Which is where he won. He beat Paul's for Thought, didn't he?
That's right, yeah.
Chester favourite.
Yeah, so wherever he turns up, they've got options anyway. Thirsk, Sandown and Chester. So I don't know, I'm just hoping he'll come down to Sandown, because I think that looks winnable. There's a few old favourites in the race that, you know, he'd be in good company there. So £5 claimer and tell them to go to Sandown.
There you go. And Yennefer, put in your tracker if obviously doesn't run this weekend. Right, before we get into our best bets of the weekend, just to let you know, the free-to-play 6 Horses Challenge is available every weekend, with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. Terms and conditions apply. Sam, I'm going to come to you for your best bet of the weekend, please. Yeah,
Walter Hartright for me in the 130, 4 from 5 in the blinkers, and hopefully he can do the business at Beverley.
Wonderful. Hayley?
Mine's going to be Doha. I'm going to stick with her. I think she represents a little bit of value in the Atalanta Stakes at Sandown in the 225.
Yeah, currently available at 6 to 1. I'm going for Spanish Blaze in the opening 7 furlong handicap at Sandown, the 150. 3-year-olds have a good record in this race. Their sole runner won this in 2022. He's just got really good form at Sandown. He won his first 2 starts over the course and distance, and then finished a close second on unfavoured soft ground last time. He's been defeated on his last couple of starts, but hasn't been beaten far. Was off a mark of 87 when beaten a length and a half last time. Returned to Sandown on faster ground. I thought he was value at around 5 to 1. That's available with Bet365, where they are actually 4 places on this race anti-post, which is quite surprising. So there you go. Spanish Blaze for me at 5 to 1 in the 150 at Sandown on Saturday. Thank you for joining us this week on Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Many thanks to both Sam and Hayley for joining me this week. As always, if you've liked what you've heard or listened to on any of this or our previous episodes, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comment section on YouTube. Rishi and I will be back next week in the company of Tom Bull, where we'll be looking ahead to the Haydock Spring Cup. Thank you very much.